Good morning, students. I welcome you again to the class of paper 8th B. Students, in our last class, we finished a marvelous poem by Nissim Ezekiel, and the title of that poem was Background Casually. Students, today we are going to start another very beautiful poem by Ezekiel, and the title of this poem is Enterprise. Students, this poem Enterprise appeared in the anthology entitled The Unfinished Man, and it is one of his best known poems. Students, I have already told you that Ezekiel was a Mumbai based Indian Jewish poet, playwright, actor, and critic. And he studied in Mumbai and London. He was a winner of Sahitya Akademi Award, and a Padma Shri was awarded to him by the government of India. And Time to Change, The Discovery of India, The Unfinished Man, and Hymns in Darkness are some of his well-known collections. Students, his poems are a depiction of his craftsmanship, restraint, and intellectual approach to everyday life. Students, if we talk about this poem could be about a pilgrimage. But it is difficult to say what sort of pilgrimage it is. It may be a pilgrimage of life, poetry, quest for some hidden truths, and wisdom. When we go through the poem, we find that a group of people, including the poet, narrator, start the enterprise as a pilgrimage. The enterprisers start on a note of hope, and their minds are full of exalting thoughts. Students, let us first go through the portion that we are going to discuss today. It all started as a pilgrimage, exalting minds and making all the burdens light. The second stage explored but did not test the call. The sun beat down to match our rage. We stood it very well, I thought, observed and put down copious notes on things the peasants sold and bought, the way of serpents and of goats. 3 cities where a sage had taught, but when the differences arose on how to cross a desert patch, we lost a friend whose stylish prose was quite the best of all our batch. A shadow falls on us and grows. So, students, the first stage of their journey is comparable to that of Edenic innocence. And he begins the poem. The first stanza goes as it started as a pilgrimage, exalting minds and making all the burdens light. The second stage explored but did not test the call. At the outset, in the beginning of the poem, the poet confirms that a group of people, with some people, he has started for a pilgrimage. At that time, their minds were full of ideas to reach their destination. They started their journey with vigor and excitement, and they were sure enough that they can easily overcome all the difficulties that they face. All of them were so enthusiastic that inconveniences seemed insignificant to them. The sun beat down to match our rage. And he says, they are not aware at all of the hostile forces in and out to thwart their noble mission. Their rage The passion behind the enterprise, enthusiasm or gusto, is equaled by the heat of the sun. The sun, as famous critic S.C. Saha says, implies the tortuous and agonies, the initial obstacles and difficulties in the enterprisers passed through. And students, the second stanza marks the second stage of the enterprise. It says, "We stood it very well, I thought, observed and put down copious notes on things the peasants sold and brought, the way of serpents and of gods. 3 children, 3 cities where a sage had taught." So the second stanza marks the second stage of the enterprise. The narrator thinks that the enterprisers rise to the occasion and face all the difficulties and obstacles very well. The things that the enterprisers see and experience cover different aspects of life. In this stanza of the poem, the poet has satirically described what they were doing during their journey. He indicates how people get distracted from main mission. They were wasting their time and energy taking notes on various things the farmers were selling and buying, and on the ways of snakes and goats. They observed and took notes on the cities without concerning themselves with what the sage had taught or what his message was. So, Ezekiel says that the enterprisers, or maybe the writers, take copious notes of what they observe. First of all, they put in writing the things peasants sell and buy. As peasants deal with the products of nature, the enterprisers deal with the nature in their own way. They take note the ways of serpents and of goats, the 3 cities where the sage had taught. Obviously, the poet makes use of symbols to convey the different experiences of the enterprisers. The serpent, it might represent Saturn, and the serpent represents evil. The goat, it represents lust or the mundane, the dull. In the words of Ezekiel himself, while the sage wisdom. Thus, the initial experiences of the enterprises cover the material, physical, and spiritual aspects of life. And the third stanza, students, says, "But when the differences arose on how to cross a desert patch, we lost a friend whose stylish prose was quite the best of all our batch. A shadow falls on us and grows." So, students, this third stanza talks about the differences that cropped up among the members, which made a whole in their unity as they continued their journey. As they reached a desert, differences arose on the questions of how to cross the challenging landscape. Some members didn't agree with others on crossing a patch of desert on the way. As a result, the best prose writer and intellectual person among them parted from the group. Therefore, a shadow of discord fell onto their enterprise and continued to grow. So, the third stanza, beginning with "but," halts the progressive positive gains of the enterprisers. The differences among the enterprisers crop up. The enterprisers differ on how to cross a desert patch, that is, the area of special difficulties. The result is that they lose a friend, the best of all our batch, in the words of the narrator. Sacrifices have to be made to pursue an enterprise. And famous Indian English poet Tagore has also said that if there is none to help you, walk alone. And in Bangla, the line goes at Ekla Chalo. The demands of every enterprise are hard to meet. The friend's stylish prose suggests that the nature of the enterprise is literary, and prose is not sufficient to meet the goal of the enterprise. It is only poetry which is required to cope up with difficulties. The last line of the third stanza, a shadow falls on us and grows, is significant. In the words of Ezekiel himself, it is the shadow of defeat. So, students, here the discussion of our today's class comes to an end. We will continue with the poem Enterprise in our next class. Thank you very much.